Hey everyone, this is Chris with Afflictor, and today we're going to talk a little bit about choosing the right mechanical broadhead for whatever circumstances you're going to be hunting. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh great, the last thing we need is a manufacturer telling us what mechanical broadhead we need to choose. Well, this video isn't anything like that. There's no sales pitch here. This is just some general information to help you choose what's right for you and your setup. So one of the first things to consider when you're looking at mechanical broadheads is to ask yourself, what am I hunting? Am I going to be going after medium size, thin skin game like a whitetail, or am I going to be chasing elk? That will make a big difference on what mechanical might be best for your setup. Also, things to consider are the distance of your shot, what is your current kinetic energy and momentum. And so let's dive into some of those things and talk about them right up front. So, what are you hunting? Do you need something gigantic to go after elk? Do you need something that's 2 inches plus? Well, not really. In fact, for most of the phone calls we get and most of the people we're associated with that are chasing elk all the time, they typically like an 1.5-inch cut mechanical broadhead. Seems to be a good all-around choice for penetration and also for accuracy at long distances. So whitetails, for you guys that want the biggest cut you can get and you're at close ranges, there's nothing wrong with shooting a 2-inch plus mechanical broadhead in those situations as long as you're properly set up for it. When you're thinking about choosing a mechanical, your setup is really what's most critical. The first question I always get when people call in is it field tip accurate? Well, my bow is very well tuned, my arrows are spined properly, and yes, the broadheads I shoot are field tip accurate. They may not be accurate out of your setup as far as field tips go because something is different in your setup. Maybe you're not tuned properly, maybe you have some cam lean or the wrong spine arrow. So you got to be cautious about your setup and shooting whatever mechanical you are and then saying it didn't fly like my field tip. So if you're well tuned, almost all mechanical broadheads are going to fly very similar to your field tip regardless of brand. Now there are some exceptions and they're pretty evident, but for the most part, there's so many good ones out there, you shouldn't have trouble picking one that is flying like a field tip for you. Another thing to consider is the distance of your shot. If you're in the eastern part of the US, generally your shots are going to be a lot closer than they are out west. So if you're hunting pronghorns out west and you're taking 80 to 90 plus yard shots, you want to make sure that your mechanical broadhead is very streamlined, something that's going to fly well at long distances. You want to make sure that it's tuned properly with your arrow and your bow so you can maintain that accuracy way out there. Now, when you're shooting closer, of course, accuracy is definitely important, but there's a lot more forgiveness at 25 yards and under than there is at 40 yards and over. So you want to make sure that your mechanical broadhead meets the aerodynamics that you need for a long flight. And also, one of the other important thing is you want to make sure that you have enough momentum and energy to let that mechanical broadhead work at long distances. So let's talk a little bit about kinetic energy, momentum, and speed. Everybody's big about speed right now. Speed has been a thing for a long time. And speed is important if you're a long-range target archer shooting field tips. Speed in the hunting side of things, all it's going to do is help you penetrate less faster. So speed is not critical when you're talking about a proper mechanical broadhead setup. Yes, it's a factor in all the formulas, I know that, but speed normally just makes you miss faster. What's much more important is kinetic energy and momentum. So kinetic energy. So that's an energy of an object in motion, okay? So when you release your arrow, the energy is 1 foot-pound for 1 foot traveled is how you measure kinetic energy. And that comes into a factor for a lot of important formulas, I know, but it is still not the most important factor in penetration. The most important factor in penetration is momentum. That's the force required to stop an object. So the more momentum you have, which is considered by weight, is what's going to drive your mechanical broadhead home. And what is important to that? To the hunter, of course, we want as much penetration as possible. We want a pass-through, so we have 2 holes so we get a better blood trail. And if we encounter bone, we want to blow through it. So that's why momentum becomes such a key factor in choosing which broadhead that you're going to shoot. Let me explain in detail. A mechanical broadhead takes a lot of energy to open. It doesn't matter if it's a front deploying, rear deploying. There's a lot of factors to consider. Does it have a band over top of it? Does it have a band beneath it? Does it have an O-ring somewhere that has to be cut for those blades to open up? Momentum is what helps get rid of those factors so you can still penetrate. So the more momentum you have, the more force that's required to stop it. So when you're looking at your mechanical broadhead, if you want to shoot a 2-inch plus mechanical head that has a big cut, you need to make sure you have momentum. So you need to make sure your arrow weight is up. And there's a lot of talk about that recently in the industry. You can see a lot of great stuff on YouTube talking about heavyweight setups, FOC, all these things. And it has become extremely important, especially when you're talking about it being more important than speed. If you want to get your speed up, you should not do it by getting a lighter arrow. You should always do it by shooting more poundage. A lighter arrow is dangerous. If I get a phone call and somebody says, hey, I just set my wife up, she's an excellent archer, she's shooting 45 pounds, and she wants to shoot a 2-inch mechanical, but everything we've shot so far is junk because she's only getting 2 inches of penetration. It's not the broadhead. She's shooting a 280 grain setup, and that you will not get any penetration out of that because there is no momentum. So momentum becomes this key factor. You can take any 40 to 50 pound archery setup, increase your arrow weight enough that you have proper momentum, and you can drive just about any mechanical broadhead on the market home through the ribs of any whitetail that you're after. So that is a huge consideration when you're choosing a mechanical. The next thing you may want to consider when you're looking at mechanical broadhead is the blade. You want sharp blades, of course, and you want good edge retention. Something that if you were to slide it in and out of your quiver, is it still razor sharp? Is it going to hold that edge for you? Are you practicing with that broadhead and shot it into a target and still going to hunt with it? Does it need touched up? One of the other things to consider is the blade thickness. So there's a variance of blade thicknesses in all of the mechanical broadheads. And if you're not careful and you're buying something because it was on sale or it was a knockoff, you can get something that's in the 20 thousandths range, anywhere in there. And those are usually pretty thin, they're pretty fragile, and a lot of them end up being brittle. So what you may want to consider is looking at mechanical broadheads that have blade thicknesses of 28 thousandths and up, preferably over 30 thousandths. That way you're sure to get a blade that is tough. Okay, so just to recap, some of the important things to consider when you're looking at a mechanical is, what are you hunting? How far are you going to be shooting? Do you have sufficient kinetic energy? And above all, momentum? Do you have a properly tuned setup? Do you know what the circumstances are you're going to be hunting in? And have you picked the broadhead that is best for what you're hunting, how you're hunting, and your current archery setup? If you can answer all those questions, you can get yourself pretty close to picking the right mechanical broadhead. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, email us, or get us online at any time.